She came off the train with nothing but a scar down her leg, a book she never opened, and eyes that had seen too much. The town of Willow Creek wasn't expecting a bride that morning. It was cold, just after sunrise, and the streets still had frost in the corners. Jonah Bridger stood alone by the small train platform, holding a hat in one hand and his hope in the other. He'd written the letter months ago. A mail-order bride, they'd called it. He wasn't proud. But life was lonely. The cattle needed tending. The rooms in his home echoed too much. And his heart had stayed silent since the war. The train hissed as it came to a stop. Steam rolled out like breath from a dragon's nose. Doors opened. People stepped off, families, merchants, a preacher. But Jonah looked for just one. And then she stepped down. She wore a plain gray shawl, pulled tight around her shoulders. Her brown boots were worn but clean. Her eyes, gray like storm clouds, searched the platform with care. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just walked toward him with her head high, like someone who had walked through fire and come out with her pride still in place. "Mr. Bridger?" she asked softly. He nodded. "You must be Miss Ward." She gave a small nod. Her hands were red from the cold and she carried only one bag. "You travel light," Jonah said, trying to ease the air. "I had to," she answered. "I couldn't carry more and walk too." Then he saw it, her limp. It was small but there. Her right leg didn't move like the left. She winced once, quickly, then straightened up. Jonah's heart, quiet for so long, stirred like an old dog waking by the fire. "Wagons this way," he said gently. They rode in silence. Rosalind watched the hills pass by like someone who didn't expect to stay. Jonah glanced at her hands, strong hands, the kind that had worked hard, not soft like the ladies back east. "You've been through something," he said without thinking. She turned her head just a little. "So have you." He didn't ask what. She didn't ask either. There was a peace in that. When they reached his homestead, she stepped down before he could help her. She looked over the land, 3 cows, a half-built barn, a cabin with a good roof but no flowers outside. "It's plain," Jonah said. "It's quiet," Rosalind said. "I like quiet." Inside the cabin she unpacked her bag. 1 book. 1 dress. A box of sewing needles. And a small wooden cross, worn from holding. They agreed to marry the next morning. No guests. Just the preacher, a Bible, and the sound of the wind. That night Jonah sat outside looking at the stars. Inside he heard her moving slowly like her bones were tired. He didn't know her yet. But he felt something in his chest, a tiny hope. Not love. Not yet. But maybe the start of something. And for the first time in a long while he whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I don't know what you're doing. But maybe you do." She didn't cry at the wedding. She didn't smile either. But when he placed the ring on her hand she didn't pull away, and that was something. Morning light spread over Willow Creek like golden butter on a rough biscuit. It was cold but not unkind. Jonah stood by the old oak tree behind the house, his Sunday shirt too tight at the neck. His boots were clean, his hair combed back. In one hand he held a plain silver ring. In the other a tiny bit of doubt. He wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid she'd leave. Rosalind came out of the cabin in her second-best dress. It was blue-gray like the sky before rain. Her limp was more noticeable on uneven ground, but she didn't hide it. She walked with steady steps, her shoulders straight. The preacher stood waiting with a small Bible. "You ready, son?" Jonah nodded. The ceremony was short. No music. No flowers. Just quiet vows and frost in the grass. "I take you," Jonah said, looking into her eyes. "I take you," Rosalind answered, her voice clear but far away, like she was speaking from another time. When he kissed her cheek, her body tensed just a little. Not from disgust. From fear. It broke his heart a little. But he said nothing. After the preacher left, Jonah built a fire inside. Rosalind boiled water and swept the floor twice. She didn't talk much. Neither did he. But it wasn't anger. It was something else. Something heavier. At supper she served plain beans and cornbread. She barely ate. "I ain't used to eating much," she said. "During the war we went without more days than not." Jonah nodded slowly. "You were in the war?" She looked down. "I was a hospital assistant. Nurse soldiers. Dug graves when we ran out of help. Lost everyone I knew in the end." Silence stretched between them. Jonah swallowed hard. "You don't have to talk about it." "I wasn't planning to," she said. "But thank you." That night, Jonah took a blanket and slept in the barn. He didn't want to frighten her. In the dark, he looked up at the wooden ceiling and whispered, Lord, I don't know how to love a woman who's forgotten how to feel safe. But I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes. Inside the cabin, Rosalind sat by the fire, holding the wooden cross in her hand. She stared at the flames for a long time. Then she whispered to the empty room, "Please, God. Don't let me ruin this. Not this." He didn't rush her. He didn't ask for more than she could give. But when he fixed her sewing box without saying a word, something inside her began to loosen. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Rosalind rose early each morning, just as the light spilled across the windows. She swept the porch, fed the chickens, boiled water for tea, even though she never drank it. She moved through each task with care, like someone who had learned not to waste even a breath. Jonah noticed how she never turned her back fully. Never sat with both feet relaxed. At night, her door stayed closed, though he never knocked. He never would. One afternoon, a cold wind blew in from the ridge. Jonah returned from the field with his coat dusted in frost. His arm, still stiff from the war, ached deep in the bone. He found Rosalind kneeling by the hearth, her sewing box open beside her. But the lid had cracked, the hinge loose and barely holding on. "Need help with that?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded once. He didn't say anything more. Just took the box, walked to the barn, and returned an hour later with the hinge repaired and polished smooth with oil. He placed it quietly on the table beside her. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome." She looked at the box a long while. Then said something he didn't expect. "During the war I had a boy. 12 years old. Carried letters back and forth from the field hospital. Smart as a whip. He carved me that box lid." Jonah sat down across from her. "What happened to him?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Her eyes were steady. "He stepped on the wrong path one day. Didn't see the trap. Gone before I could scream." Jonah bowed his head. "I'm sorry." She nodded. "So am I." The fire crackled between them. That night she left her door open a little. Just a crack. And Jonah, seeing it, laid down in the barn again, but this time with a small smile. He could feel it, the wind shifting. Not love. Not yet. But something warm was waking up. The next morning he found a biscuit on the table. Still warm. Wrapped in cloth. Waiting for him. She didn't need to say, "Thank you." She showed it instead, with stitches and bread and silence that didn't feel so lonely anymore. It was 2 weeks before the first real storm came. The wind rolled across the hills like a wagon full of thunder, and the sky turned dark before noon. Jonah came in from the barn, boots soaked and jacket dripping. Rosalind was already by the hearth, piling wood, steady as ever. "You all right?" he asked. "I've seen worse," she said, looking at the windows shaking in their frames. They moved around each other like people who had learned to share space but not yet share hearts. Still, there was something different now. When Jonah handed her a dry shawl, she didn't pull away. When she passed him a cup of coffee, her fingers brushed his, and didn't tremble. That night, as the storm howled and lightning cracked across the sky, Jonah offered to stay inside. "I won't bother you," he said. "I'll sleep in the chair if you'd like." Rosalind hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "You can stay. The storm is bad." He laid a blanket out by the hearth, made no fuss, and sat down with an old book. She watched him over her sewing. "Do you read much?" she asked. "Not well," he said. "But I try." "I used to read to the soldiers," she said after a moment. "It helped them forget." He looked up. "Would you read now?" She opened her book, Pilgrim's Progress, the only one she had. Her voice was soft at first, then stronger as the words filled the room. Jonah listened like a man starved for music. When she finished the chapter, he was still sitting there, his eyes on her. "That was nice," he said. "You sound like peace." She looked down, hands trembling. "I haven't felt like peace in a long time." He stood up then, not close, not rushing. "You don't have to feel it to be it," he said. The next morning, after the storm passed, Jonah went to chop wood. When he came back, a quilt lay across the chair where he had slept. It wasn't new, but it was mended with care, patches of blue and brown and soft gray. He touched it gently. It wasn't just a blanket. It was an answer. She found the letter by accident. What she did with it told him more than any kiss ever could. Spring hadn't come yet, but the snow had started to melt in soft puddles near the porch. The land looked like it was waking up from a long, sad sleep. Rosalind had started humming while she worked. It was barely there, soft as a whisper, but Jonah heard it. He never said a word about it, but he noticed. Just like he noticed how she sat closer to the fire now. How her eyes weren't always watching the door. One afternoon, while cleaning the top shelf of the cupboard, She found a thin envelope tucked between an old Bible and a box of bullets. It had her name on it. The handwriting was shaky but strong. The date on the front was from 2 months before she arrived. Jonah's letter. She didn't open it right away. She sat down at the table, fingers tracing the edge of the paper like it might break. She glanced toward the window where Jonah was mending a fence out back, sleeves rolled up, the weight of his thoughts hidden in quiet work. Then with a deep breath she opened it. Dear Miss Ward, my name is Jonah Bridger. I don't know much about courting. I've never been good with words, not since the war. I lost more than time on that battlefield, lost part of myself. I don't expect much. Just honesty. Just kindness. I got a home. It's not fancy but it's warm. I've got land that needs a woman's touch, and a heart that's been lonely too long. If you can stand the silence, I promise not to rush the noise. If you come, I'll do my best to be gentle. If you don't, I'll understand. Jonah Bridger. Rosalind folded the letter slowly, pressing her hand flat over it like a prayer. That evening she made stew with bits of meat she'd been saving. She set the table with care, placed the letter beside his plate. When Jonah saw it, he froze. You found it, he said. She nodded. You never said those words out loud. He lowered his head. Didn't think I needed to. Not after you came. I didn't come for comfort, she said, voice soft. I came because I was tired of running. Jonah looked up. Do you still feel like running? Rosalind met his eyes. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't look away. No, she whispered. Not anymore. And that night, for the first time, she left her bedroom door open, wider than before. She didn't say why. She didn't have to. He didn't know what love looked like until he saw her planting something in dead soil, believing it would grow. The snow melted faster than usual that year. Patches of brown earth peeked through the frost, and the trees on the ridge stretched their limbs like men waking from a long rest. It was planting season soon, and Jonah had plans for the north field. But he hadn't expected to find Rosalind outside with a basket of seeds in her lap. She was kneeling in the dirt, bare fingers working the ground like it had done her no wrong. Jonah stopped a few feet away. You planting something? She didn't look up. Something small. Herbs mostly. I used to grow lavender. It helped the soldiers sleep. Jonah watched her. The way she touched the earth, soft and steady, was the same way she held a teacup or folded her apron. Like everything deserved care. You sure it'll take root? He asked. Her eyes met his then. Calm but tired. I've seen things grow in worse places. That night, Rosalind cooked rabbit stew and sliced bread she'd baked herself. Jonah said grace softly. When he looked up, he caught her watching him. You pray every night? She asked. He nodded. Ever since my brother died. I figure if I stop, the silence might take me too. Rosalind looked down at her bowl. I used to pray when I held dying boys in my arms. After a while, I wondered if God heard me at all. He heard you, Jonah said. You're still here, ain't you? She didn't answer. But later, when Jonah passed by the bedroom door, he heard her whispering into the dark. It wasn't much. Just a soft, stumbling, Lord help me. The next morning she left a tiny sprig of lavender in his coat pocket. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She thought peace meant being left alone. But sometimes God sends someone knocking, to ask if that peace is real. The morning was quiet. Too quiet, Jonah thought. The chickens hadn't made a sound. The wind was still. The dogs didn't bark. Then he heard it, a horse. Rosalind stood at the window. Her hands were still, her face pale. A man rode into the yard. Dusty. Thin. Wearing a badge that hadn't seen polish in months. Jonah stepped out to meet him. Can I help you? The man nodded. Looking for a woman. Name's Rosalind Ward. Says here she's wanted in regard to a missing soldier. Last seen at a field hospital down by Franklin. Rosalind had come out now. Her apron still damp from morning chores. She looked at the badge, then at Jonah. I didn't leave anyone behind, she said, voice low. The man frowned. You were the last one seen with Private Levi Kent. His mother never got his body. She's been asking for years. Rosalind swallowed hard. He was buried. I buried him myself. His hand was gone. Face torn. I didn't even have a full name. Just Levi. The deputy took off his hat. I'm sorry. His mother just wanted to know. I reckon I'll tell her you did right. Then he looked at Jonah. She your wife? Jonah didn't hesitate. She is. Rosalind looked at him, startled. The deputy nodded. Good. She's got someone now. He tipped his hat, mounted his horse and rode off. Jonah turned to her. I'm sorry you had to see that. She blinked fast like trying not to cry. You told him I was your wife. I told him the truth. But you never asked. I didn't need to, he said. She stepped closer, heart pounding. You'd still want me even with ghosts behind me? Jonah's voice was steady. I've got ghosts too. Maybe they'll keep each other company. For a long second she stood still. Then slowly, carefully she reached out and touched his hand. Not grabbed. Not clung. Just touched. And he held it like it was something sacred. Because it was. They didn't wear fine clothes or say fancy words. But they made promises that reached heaven anyway. The lavender had bloomed early. Rosalind stood in the little garden behind the house, her hands brushing the purple flowers. It was the same patch of ground where she had first knelt with seeds and prayer. Now, something living had taken root. So had she. Jonah walked up behind her, holding a worn box in his hand. I found this in Ma's old chest, he said. It was her wedding ring. Not worth much, but it held. Rosalind turned to face him. You sure? She asked. He nodded. I want you to have it. Not just to wear it, but to know that I mean what I say. She looked at him a long time, as if seeing a different man than the one who'd first opened his door to a stranger. You're kind, Jonah Bridger, she said. But I ain't pretty. I ain't gentle all the time. And I still wake up shaking some nights. I've seen you with your hands in dirt, with your eyes full of fire, with your voice reading scripture like it was stitched into your soul, he said. If that's not beauty, I don't know what is. She didn't speak. She just nodded. So they stood there in the garden as the sun slid behind the hills. No preacher. No crowd. Just two people and God. Jonah cleared his throat. I promise to be good to you. To listen even when I don't understand. To never leave even when the world gets loud. Rosalind's eyes filled with tears. I promise to stay, she whispered. To make this house warm. To love you the best I know how, even on days I don't feel like myself. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It was a little loose, but it settled in just fine. Then for the first time he leaned down and kissed her, not with hunger but with care. A kiss like coming home. That night, Jonah didn't sleep on the floor or in the chair. He held his wife in bed as she cried for reasons she couldn't explain. He didn't ask why. He just stayed. Outside, the lavender swayed in the moonlight. And inside, something new was blooming. She thought the war had taken everything. But then one morning she knelt by the stove and wept, for joy. The days passed gentle. Jonah fixed fence posts and sharpened plow blades. Rosalind mended clothes and baked biscuits, her skirts catching the morning light like soft sails on a still sea. They didn't talk about the past much anymore. Not because it didn't matter. But because the present had grown thick and warm, like stew left simmering all day on the stove. Then came the morning she couldn't lift the kettle. Her hands shook. Her knees buckled. She leaned over the sink and emptied her stomach, one hand on the wall, the other pressed to her chest. Jonah found her sitting on the porch step, pale as milk. You sick? He asked gently. She nodded. I think I'm carrying. Jonah sat beside her. He didn't say anything right away. Just let the words settle between them like snow on still water. Are you afraid? He asked at last. She was quiet for a long time. I've held dying men in my arms, Jonah, she said. I've buried children not my own. But this is different. This is mine. Ours. He nodded. Then we'll guard it. Together. They went into town the next day not for gossip or fuss, but for a book on midwifery and some peppermint to help her stomach. The woman behind the store counter asked, You expecting? Rosalind hesitated, then smiled. Yes, I think we are. The woman beamed. Well, it's about time joy came back to that ranch of yours. On the way home, Jonah reached across the wagon bench and took her hand. You sure you want this? He asked. Rosalind looked up at the sky. The sun was soft. The road long. The world quiet. I want it more than I've ever wanted anything, she said. But more than that, I believe I was made for it. That night, Jonah lit a fire early. Rosalind sat curled near the hearth, hands resting on her belly. She didn't know yet if it was a boy or a girl. But she knew it was a beginning. And for the first time in years, the future didn't look like something to fear. It looked like something to hold. She thought pain had ended her story. But sometimes pain is what brings life into the world. The spring rains came hard. The roof groaned at night. Wind howled against the shutters like it was chasing ghosts. But inside their little home, the fire never went out, and neither did Jonah's hands. He stayed close now. Didn't ride far. Kept the horses fed and the blankets warm. Rosalind had grown slower. Rounder. Beautiful in a way no mirror could explain. She laughed more softly now. Walked with care. Prayed out loud. Jonah would wake in the night just to check if her breathing was calm. Then one morning before the rooster crowed, he found her standing barefoot by the hearth, hands pressed low against her belly. "It's time," she whispered. He helped her to the bed. Lit every lamp. Boiled water. Read out loud from Psalms while she gritted her teeth and whispered Jesus' name again and again. Hours passed. She screamed once. Then went quiet. "Rosalind?" he said, fear rising in his throat. But she only gripped his hand tighter. "I'm still here," she breathed. "But I can't do it alone." "You're not alone," he whispered. "Not ever." Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, a cry broke the air. Tiny. What? Full of life. Jonah blinked fast, tears falling before he even realized he was crying. "It's a girl," he said, voice cracking. Rosalind lay still, eyes half closed. "A girl?" He nodded, pressing the bundle into her arms. Rosalind looked down at the small red face. Her fingers trembled as they traced the baby's cheek. "She's got your eyes," she said. "She's got your heart," Jonah answered. They named her Mercy. Not because life had been easy, but because God had been good. The days that followed were quiet and full. Neighbors came with broth and blankets. The town preacher stopped by just to pray over the child. Even the old widow from the general store brought a knitted bonnet. And when the sun set on the seventh day, Jonah found Rosalind sitting in the rocking chair, baby asleep on her chest, humming an old hymn he didn't recognize. "You all right?" he asked. She looked up, her face soft with peace. "I never thought I'd live to see this," she said. "I was broken, Jonah. Damage. I thought the war took everything." "It gave me you," Jonah said. They stood under the stars that night, husband, wife, and child. The wind had stilled. The river nearby gurgled like it was singing. Rosalind leaned into him. "I want more," she whispered. "More babies?" "No. Well, yes. But more of this. More of us. A whole life. All of it." Jonah kissed her forehead. "We'll have it. As long as there's breath in me." And in the quiet, in the calm after the storm, Rosalind closed her eyes and believed it. Because love had not just found her. It had chosen to stay. Forever. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in love that heals, faith that holds, and a forever that starts with small steps, then please like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more heartfelt Western tales just like this one. Your support helps stories like this one ride a little farther down the trail. Until next time, may your heart stay open and your faith stay strong.